I want to give context, then I'm going to ask the bishop to say a few words about context, but I just, for me, I'm passionate about this topic, and I have been for a long, long time, and it really wasn't until I met Betsy Densmore that I actually knew there was a word for it, there was a term for it, that this concept, much kind of like how when I got into activism and community organizing, I didn't know there was such a name for it, right, or like an occupation potentially. And so I had the same experience with social enterprise, and I did the Social Enterprise Academy at UCLA with my team at Jubilee that was made up of board and staff. And it was a life-changing experience, really, because it was just giving language and validation to all these things that I'd been about and been dreaming about and been doing and stuff like that. So my motivation for being here, and we had a meeting not too long ago with the new community, and we did social enterprise, talking to them, and Anna Olson, who was there, said that, you know, she's a little skeptical about social enterprise. And I'm right there with her too, because I'm a little skeptical too. But I'm not as skeptical of social enterprise as I am frustrated with the thinking that only stewardship and like grant writing or fundraising is the only tools at our disposal. And what I mean by that is that at St. Stephen's, almost everyone pledges, almost every family pledges. I would almost say 99% of families pledge at St. Stephen's. And they give generously. Except, well, almost all the families. No, just kidding. I'm still in the house, I'm not going to say anything. And they give generously. Some even 10% or more. But when you total all that up, it doesn't even compare to a church doing the same exact thing in another part of town. Yeah. And so, and that can make you feel defeated and deflated. And so for me, social enterprise, stewardship's important. I'm also a fundraiser. I know how to write grants, and I've written, in a long, long period of time, 20 years, I've probably written over $1 million worth of grants and stuff. But even that is not enough when there's this other thing at our disposal, and that's social enterprise. And I think it potentially has the power to be the great equalizer for me. That's the way I approach it. Because I'm committed and I'm passionate about working in smaller, low-income communities. But their dreams are just as big as everyone else's for ministry, right? And I want to figure out ways to fund that, right? And so for me, I feel like social enterprise has done well. It really just allows us to keep our dreaming big, right? And creative. And so that's what this is about for me. What it is about, and I imagine we at St. Stephen's are not the only community out there that has this, the tension between dreams and, possibilities and like resources, right? So yes, keep the stewardship pushing, right? Go to the stewardship university, learn about the fundraising, and when Lorenzo comes around and starts talking about capital campaign stuff, get involved, right? But that's not the only thing at our disposal. So I hope that this becomes an ongoing conversation about how social enterprise can be that other tool in our toolbox, and it can be kind of an ongoing kind of learning experience that hopefully will be kind of an equalizer of sorts for many of our parish communities or our dioceses in total. So now I come at it a little bit differently, perhaps maybe, than Bishop Taylor. So I want Bishop Taylor also to give his context from perspective. When I first brought this to him, first time he introduced me, it was kind of like we're going to save all the churches, and my heart dropped into my boots, thinking about, I didn't want to set the bar too high, but I think even the possibilities even for that. So I want you to hear where Bishop Taylor's come from on this whole thing.
Thank you so much, Jamie.
Yeah.
Jamie referred to the Stewardship University. I actually like to think about this as the Social Enterprise University. So we've got President Edwards Acton. We have our first I wish endowed professor Moore. In the icebreaker that they devised among us members of the student body here at the second meeting, I actually learned things and got ideas. I learned from one of my conversation partners that there was actually a moment when Echo Park was being renovated, when there was the possibility that had been floated of the diocese taking over, shall we say, stewardship of the boathouse, which, as Dr. Law says, has certain gospel resonance. And the little tea house there. And I've actually had colleagues, Eric, who are thinking about how, when the contract comes up, at least at the cafe, how we might compete for that. But we've got resources here at the Cathedral Center, which might be freed up by we've got the prevailing sin in our region of the cost of real estate, which makes it so hard for working people to afford to live here, and practically speaking, hard for some of our young people to put down roots for themselves and their families, which is why so many folks are moving to Colorado or the Pacific Northwest. So there are real implications which are harsh that have to do with the cost of real estate, but it also gives us potential for using the property we do have for the glory of God and to sustain our institutions. Now, to speak to what Jamie said about his sort of skepticism about the idea that a social enterprise can be a panacea and perhaps make it possible to save churches which otherwise might need to, shall we say, go into a period of lying fallow. I will admit to being an optimist. And my optimism is rooted in the fact that I know that everywhere in our diocese, no matter where a church is, no matter whether it's struggling or thriving, that hearts in that neighborhood are hungry. Bishop Bruce has just come back from an extraordinary couple of 3 weeks in dioceses and provinces in Korea and in the Philippines. And in the Philippines, she came back with 2 things that I think concern us and I think could inspire us here. The first thing is she learned that it comes naturally to our Episcopalians in dioceses in the Philippines to understand that churches in close proximity to one another have shared responsibility to one another. It comes naturally in these settings for the smaller, less well-resourced churches to depend on the larger, wealthier ones. And so that's good news that comes to us, and I think good modeling that comes to us from the Philippines. Something that Bishop Bruce actually warns us about, that she heard from folks in both Korea and the Philippines who have been talking for a generation about sustainability. She says it's possible for us to see sustainability just as a way of generating revenue and keeping the wolf from the door. People aren't coming to church, so we'll, quote, rent the space out. And this is something that could perhaps tempt us. And I think that leads us, and Bishop Bruce and her conversation partners in the Philippines say that should lead us back toward a nexus between sustainability and spirituality. The two are intrinsically related. For each of us, in whatever community we serve, whether it's a mission church that's struggling at the diocesan center or a well-resourced center, we have resources that can be leveraged for the glory of God. We do that by listening with Jesus' own ears to the needs of our siblings around us, whether they're churched or unchurched, formerly churched, poorly churched. That piece doesn't matter. There are siblings in creation, and they have needs that our Lord has sent us here to serve. And we become engaged in social enterprise by listening to those needs, finding creative ways to serve them. Thus do our financial needs, because it's possible that some of this work will indeed be revenue enhancing. Our financial need crosses our resolve to listen carefully to the cries around us of those who are living in situations which are perilous or unjust. And if we find that sweet spot between our needs and theirs, our faith is the Holy Spirit will take care of our churches and perhaps make a church sustainable. That according to a classic business model, someone upstairs might be inclined to say, we should just let that church go. I'd be sad if that happened, because I'm pretty sure that Jesus would be in that church, because that church is in a place where the neighborhood has ceased to have the wherewithal to support it, and those are the neighborhoods where our Lord would be. So I'm a little bit more of an optimist, but we're looking for that sweet spot between service and sustainability, and we're grateful to Betsy and Jamie for helping us find it. Thank you both so much.
Thank you. And I just want to thank Bishop Taylor for being here, to committing to being to these sessions. I think it's important. Sometimes we can, I've had experience of doing gatherings and stuff and never quite syncs up with, people that, it can trigger some possibility, it just kind of sits out there, like a strategic plan on the shelf, at your church or something like that. So thank you, Bishop Taylor, for being here with us. And I'm ultimately an optimist too, or faithful if not optimistic. So, and then finally, I just want to introduce Betsy Densmore again. I feel like I'm getting pretty good at this. And I won't do so much. Yeah. Betsy, first of all, I'm just going to start Betsy. A friend now, I'm proud to call her a friend. She's a fellow Episcopalian, which is cool. She's from St. John's, Costa Mesa. She's on the vestry down there. And one of the professors that were teaching with the business school, working with business professors, with MBA students and undergrads, that did this awesome program called the Social Enterprise Academy, where they took 10 teams of nonprofits and taught them about this kind of stuff to kind of augment what they were already doing and add that tool to their toolbox. And at the end of 2 quarters, I believe we did it, you got to pitch your idea. Each team got to pitch their idea to potential investors, right? People who want to invest in making an impact in the community, doing something good. And I can't remember what the final grant total was for that, but we all went up. We didn't win, but we all went up and gave it our best shot, pitched. And actually, everyone walks out of there with a great idea and a business plan and sustainability and all that kind of stuff. So we have this plan ready to roll. Well, I should probably talk to you about this, Bishop, at some point, but it's a good idea. I know it really is for the larger Episcopal Church, but that would work really well in LA. So that's where I met her, and then we worked in a group together where she met with EDs going down the road. She's taught at Pepperdine, or teaches at Pepperdine. She's taught at UCLA, similar stuff. She's co-founder of the Social Ventures, I've got that wrong, something like that. And then also the Academies for Social Entrepreneurship also. And so she's just pretty much done everything, is Betsy Densmore, and she's got a lot to share with us. I just want to say she's here to teach and convey her wisdom, but we're all here to teach. And I think you would concur with that, and we all have a lot to share with each other and learn from each other, and I hope we can kind of cultivate that spirit as we go along.
Yeah.
All right?
Cool. I would say my style is much more coaching than teaching.
Yeah.
How I would distinguish coaching is in coaching, it's your game and I'm coaching you, but you're the quarterback. And insofar as putting a social enterprise together is concerned, if it's not your game, it probably won't turn out. One of the biggest sources of failure for any business is not having like undauntable leadership that's so empowered and passionate and committed to what they're doing that they're going to push through even when there are breakdowns, which there will inevitably be. So, the part of my reason for sitting in front of you is that about 10 years ago, I became the principal in this organization called Academies for Social Entrepreneurship, whose focus has always been to support charities, 501c3 organizations, in identifying mission-related earned income strategies. So, to Bishop Taylor's point, there are a lot of ways to earn income, like renting your parking lot, which I endorse. But what I'm really interested in supporting people doing is finding ways to earn income that help solve the social problem consistent with what you're up to anyway. So I'm just so thrilled that my church is, interested in forwarding these kinds of ideas, because I also think that a well done social enterprise will also expand our impact as much as it will expand our income. Okay, so I just want to, for anyone who hasn't been around, this is our definition of a social enterprise and of what we mean by earned income. So it's pretty simple, but it is crucially, it does want to advance a social mission, and the way you generate the earned income might be from the sale of a product or service, but in some cases what makes sense is to have a strategic alliance with some business that is that likes your mission and you like their mission, and so you figure out a way to help market their products or services and you get paid for helping. We've seen that's sometimes called cause-related marketing. We're seeing a lot more of it than we used to because so many businesses have woken up to the fact that people actually care that they be socially responsible. So before we get into the table talks and the opportunity for you to think alone and then with your colleagues, we thought it would be useful to just take a few minutes to describe some of examples of social enterprises we have known and loved. So we're just going to do a bullet on each, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, a lot of, some you may know, some you don't. Hope Gardens at St. Stephen's, and we sell seedlings there. We have a CSA also that runs out of there that generates, right now, currently, we're just at see if we can maintain the capacity. We are making $600 a month on 10 subscriptions. And then we sell seedlings. You got the idea, Seeds of Hope, Tim Alderson's over here, and I'd see him go start all these gardens, and they bring these truckloads go to Home Depot and come back with these, truckloads of seedlings. And I'm like, why are you buying them from Home Depot? If we grow them, will you buy them from us? At that price. And he said, of course, I'd much rather buy blessed, seedlings than from Home Depot. So my mission became to run Home Depot out of business. And then,
tell that long story for everybody.
But no, sorry. Shared Spaces is just a bunch of offices at St. Luke's in Long Beach. And it really started by Gary Cummins, really just using the property by bringing particular entities there, nonprofits, all of them nonprofits that will actually could potentially learn together and work together and even create kind of a we work situation there. The Episcopal Urban Internship Program is a year-long service year program for young adults. And we partner with nonprofits and schools and churches, and those entities pay Jubilee Consortium $22,000 a year, and with that we sustain everything about the intern programmatically in their life together, and they work full-time. These are college graduates. They work full-time at these different institutions. So it's the EYP program is in its 28th year, and we don't raise any money through grants. Abundant Table, the awesome ministry up in Ventura area, and they do a number of things there. But one of the things they do too is they do educational stuff in schools, and they also about farming and stuff like that. But they also have a CSA as well and generate income to do young adult ministry on campuses, Lutheran and Episcopal, at the Cal State up there. The Kaleidoscope Institute. What would be your bullet point, Eric?
My bullet point?
I don't want to speak for anybody in the room.
We provide services that churches, local church dioceses, and also ecumenically in all major denominations, and in exchange for their word of mouth passing along what we do, and also we do Grace Economic. They pay on a sliding scale of what they can afford, and so that's we've been not surviving, we're thriving for 12 years with an initial investment of $25,000 for diocese, and we had a budget of over $200,000 for the last 10 years, supporting staff and so on. So that's what we do.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric.
Right here in DHAS, largely self-sufficient training development.
Okay, no money from the diocese.
Yeah.
That's music to Bishop Taylor's ears. Housing, St. Michael Riverside. So, Tim, I'm going to put you on the spot. Sure. This is the Mary Christ, out there. Can you just say what you're doing out there? Particularly, I'm going to put the housing piece up there, but we can.
Yeah. So, St. Michael's in Riverside is one of those big properties that was developed back in the 60s. It's 3.5 acres, a church, a parish hall, and a lot of grass and asphalt. So it started out just as a farming project, growing food to create vocational training programs and jobs, sustained by the produce that we grow there. That has expanded now into a housing project, 50 units of permanent supported housing as part of the city's attempt to end homelessness through that means permanent supported housing. And that is also another revenue stream for the parish as well. We partnered with a developer to develop it and another operator to operate it, so we're really leasing the land. So the revenue stream ongoing from the housing project and from the vocational training and the farming.
Awesome.
Good. Good Soil Industries, so the last three, well, no, that's not true. So Good Soil Industries was started by a church in Bellflower, and it is what is a really common social enterprise model, which is it's a landscape company which provides training and job placement ultimately for people who are generally who've been homeless or are recovering from substance abuse problems. There are lots of other models around, but I like that one because it's faith-based. Episcopal Communities and Services is another offshoot of our diocese, which runs three very large and I hope profitable, certainly sustainable living communities for the aging, one of which has a dear friend of mine in it. And Habitat for Humanity is actually quite faith-based and has been building housing of all sorts for many years, and I wanted to put that one in just to remind us that you can go big and have it turn out. I think last time I talked to the ED of the Habitat in Orange County, I would say about 65% of their revenue is earned income. So now, what we're really here for is to generate conversation and new ideas about what opportunities you have. And for that reason, we created some worksheets. And the idea is to give you a chance to work on these worksheets on your own and then in conversation. And the first one is focused on the place to always start, which is on what are the assets and competencies of your particular parish, church. So I encourage you to take a few minutes here to follow the instructions on the slide. 5 minutes, and then we'll have everybody go in groups. I mean, talk among yourselves and see what else you come up with. So let me explain these worksheets. I'm sorry they got printed shrunk, but the purpose of this worksheet is to give you a structure to force you to think about the people certainly the people in leadership, and what they, in particular, what their competencies or skills are, because for most of us, our people are probably our biggest asset. And on this chart, I've listed some of the skills and expertise that you might find among your leadership, but I've also left blank spaces in each category because you may think of some other special assets. Why this is, and this, like all these sheets, are designed to give you a place to start, but you hopefully will take them back home and use them, finish them up yourself, and or use them with other members of your parish. Because what I have seen repeatedly when people do a thorough job of filling this out is that they find buried treasure. So that's worksheet one.
Can I send it, sorry,
What?
can I send this to them
Yes,
electronically?
absolutely.
Yeah, so I'll send this to you electronically, sorry, printed on portrait there. But you can print it landscape or poster size.
Right, I mean, we're focusing on talking today anyway. And then worksheet two, these two go very much together, is a place to brainstorm your physical assets. So buildings, equipment, IT, whatever else, parking lots, right? So I would invite you to take no more than 5 minutes working individually, and then ask that you share among yourselves and see what you learn from each other. So the point of worksheet 3 is to think about things that could be creating a need or a want that a social enterprise you create would satisfy. Driving forces, what do I mean by driving forces? Trends, opportunities, shifts in government funding, shifts in age groups, shifts in, new needs that are, like housing is a tsunami of need now in this area. These are some questions that I mostly stole from Peter Diamandis, who's a highly successful entrepreneur, for thinking about possible trends or driving forces that might be a need you can satisfy. So again, I would invite you to take a minute on your own and then talk among yourselves. The structure of this worksheet, how did I do this worksheet? Yeah. There's some questions at the top of the worksheet, worksheet 3, that are also intended to just get your mind going. And then a place to write the things that you may not do that, you may not write your summary right now, but as you are coalescing around a particular idea, you would want to be able to say why you were coalescing around that idea, and that's the point of the summary, 3 bullets. Okay, so this is one more conversation related to, really what I'm trying to do here is give you tools that will frame your ability to pick an earned income that makes sense, an earned income strategy that makes sense in your community. And the point of this 4th worksheet is to help you think about the balance between social and financial returns, or as Bishop Taylor started our day with sustainability versus spirituality. We could rename the axis here if we wanted to. Here's a picture of the axis. So you may, as a community, decide that that really you're most concerned about a budget deficit. So your priority is to find something that generates as much cash as possible, because that's what you need right now. And you want to honor the mission or the spiritual nature of the church, but it is not your priority to expand that impact so much as it is to make sure you keep the doors open. Or conversely, you may, as a community, decide that your highest priority is to find something that expands your footprint in the community. So maybe you don't care if you don't make that much money on it, but you want to generate some earned income just as a way of engaging people, but your focus is on providing a service or a product that's going to really solve a problem quick. That'll be the lower right-hand corner. Ideally, we want to come up with a social enterprise that is the best of both. And what you don't want to do is go forward with the lower left-hand corner is the box reserved for things that we're doing because we've always done them, even though they don't generate much money and they don't have much impact. This whole conversation is also an opportunity to kind of relook at the things you spend your time and effort doing and engage your leadership in doing that you might be able to get rid of, you might want to stop doing, because actually it's not the best use of their time and talent. So, let's see, do I have another slide? No. So, again, the idea is to just have you think out loud and talk among yourselves about how you weigh in on these 2 very key factors. And then we'll do a little bit of a debrief before we move on to the 4th conversation, which is dealing with resistance factors. All right? Let me move on, because it kind of feeds into the next section. So as I said, worksheet 5 is not something we have time to spend time on, and really it's for you to capture the ideas you're thinking about. So let me talk about the last thing we promised to talk about, which is resistance factors, otherwise known as what can stop social enterprise from being started or being successful. So the first one is the one everybody thinks of, not having the seed capital. I will, with fervor, assert that finding capital is the smallest problem, because if you have a good idea and you have a market for it, you're going to be able to find somebody to fund it. Here are a few pointers on places to find funding. So this is a graph. What is this? It's a chart of different forms of funding, and it illustrates a continuum starting with the grants we all know and love, moving across different kinds of individual donations, or sometimes donations, sometimes loans, into more formal, larger loans, into investments from people who have now called themselves impact investors. And these towards the far right of this chart, what we're really talking about is larger amounts of money that one might go after. One was after doing a housing development, for example. The more, for most of us, what we're going to look for is loans or grants, because as a 501c3, we can't have equity investors. If you wanted an equity investor, meaning somebody's going to buy shares in your business or shares in your housing property, then you have to set up an LLC or a B Corp or something, because 501c3s can't have equity investors. Obvious sources of loans or grants, I think, for us, are individuals who consider themselves venture philanthropists and are interested in models where you're both fulfilling a social mission and making yourself more sustainable. Foundations and CDFIs, that's community development financial institutions, who are also more and more interested in this model. And even the diocese, which has, you could say that you could speak more specifically than I could to some of the funds that are around that might be open to this kind of thing. Do you want to say a word?
For seed capital.
Yeah.
Well, what we're trying to do is, and again, the bishop is in and out, right? Every time I talk, he's not here, but so I don't know how fully fleshed out this is right now, but the bishop is, we talked about in this, as we talked about the social enterprise stuff, I said that having seed capital is going to be important, and having, and there's already possibilities now, for instance, the credit. Okay, so if you don't even think about, again, it's like redefining how we think about things. So churches can very easily go get a loan from what we would call a loan, right, from the Episcopal Credit Union for up to $50,000, and you can spread that over an 84-month payback period. Now, I happen to think the interest rate on that is high, and I think it's worth engaging the board of the credit union to talk about why it would behoove them to lower that, and they'll still be successful, but they make a lot of churches more successful. Nevertheless, it's an opportunity. So if like the way I think, if I have $50,000 capital, and all I have to do is pay back $600 a month or something, $500 a month, or a period of time, I'm going to come up with a way to do something with that. So that's the first thing that I told the bishop, that we need to have an impact fund, so like a social lending fund that would be parallel with something like that, but have a lower or no interest rate, and it would have different caps on that depending on what we could generate into the fund. And it's not just an opportunity for churches and ministries to seek capital, but it's an opportunity for people that want to, that have generous hearts, but also just don't want to be about charity thing, but want to invest in something. They want to invest in some communities' ideas and visions and future and stuff like that, that this would be a place, kind of an escrow account, where they could then make an investment, right, with the anticipation that in 5 or 10 years they'll get their capital back. And then there could be a fundraising piece to this impact loan fund. This is where Lorenzo would come in, right? And he could try to just fundraise for that, so that the bishop with confidence can underwrite any loan, any impact loan that's made with confidence to any investor, right, that's going to give that. I know in 10 years, I'll guarantee it, we will get your, because we've raised funds to underwrite it. Now, ideally, and since, that kind of thing has a high rate of payback, that, you're not going to have to fundraise a ton money to underwrite that kind of stuff. I was just talking about it, Bishop, and seed capital, you know, that's one of the necessities for doing social enterprise, and I talked a little bit about that conversation we had about creating some kind of social impact fund where it could be used for seed capital, but also be used for people to invest in this fund that would be used primarily, you know, for that kind of work. It was just kind of sketching out.
Yeah, and on this slide is the rationale that many of us are making to philanthropists as well as family foundations for doing impact investing, which is essentially the case you just made as well.
And can I just point out the Fund for Theological Exploration too? Used to be the Fund for Theological Education, offers seed money, seed grants for this kind of stuff. And I just got an email from Katie Cadigan who she mentioned another one for Do Good X or something like that. I'll put but there's funds out there. It's gosh, I wish I could just tell you that. But it's an organization connected to the Episcopal Church and stuff that is particularly looking to lend to startups, social enterprise startups, particularly for women and for communities, diverse communities. So I'll try to make all that stuff available online. And yeah, so at some point I want to plug what they're doing over there, just real quick, in Santa Monica, because I forgot to do that.
Go for it.
St. Augustine, Santa Monica, and Katie Cadigan, she wrote me this email, I didn't know this was happening over there, and they've got this, you talk about really assessing kind of what the needs are, or what the opportunities. So they're in Santa Monica, right there on the, and where it's hustle and bustle, a lot of hip, tech, all these kind of people, right, entrepreneurial people. So they've come up with this plan. If you've ever heard of like WeWork, you know what WeWork is, and cross campus, and it's where you get you get people to come in and they can buy table space or they can buy office space or whatever in a shared work environment. It has a lot of amenities, like could have a kombucha bar or a beer bar, could have ping pong tables, but there's a lot. So the idea is to have a cross-fertilization and to have accessibility to other entrepreneurs and other people, and it's a shared community space. So in that model at St. Augustine's, they're creating their own, but they're the thing that they're adding is the monastic ethos. And so in this shared workspace, they're also adding the hours, right, of the day. And so they've decided that they're 3 times a day they will work into the experience of this communal work experience, some kind of office that they will do together, right? And so it's pretty cool. So people that are entrepreneurial, people that need that kind of space, that are trying to build and create something, and also have the spiritual dimension to themselves, will be really at home. You feel really at home, and they're calling it divine office is what they're calling it. So I thought it was great, and yeah, the divine office. So it's just another. That's like that idea alone could be duplicated at so many places, especially I talk about how we use space and stuff like that. Shared workspace would be
with
probably,
a spiritual dimension.
Yeah, well, with or without a spiritual dimension.
Right.
We don't do spiritual stuff at St. Stephen's, but we could have it without. Just kidding. But yeah, any version of that would work, I think, in a number of different directions.
Yeah. Okay, and then one other slide on sources of funding. So crowdsourcing, meaning a little money from lots of people. There's billions, literally billions being raised on the internet with crowdfunding sites, primarily donations and loans, and I've put up the logos of 2 of the larger crowdfunding sites, Indiegogo for donations and Kiva for loans, primarily to small businesses, micro businesses, both nationally and internationally. And then the last symbol, Stone Soup, a story we all know, is a reminder that raising small amounts of money from lots of people both gives them the opportunity to support something that they care about and that makes a difference in their community, to your point, in the case of the exercise classes, but also in regards to anything we're trying to start that is clearly fulfilling our mission as well as making our communities more sustainable. And there are lots of models there are literally lots of models for doing this that also are ways to promote gatherings and promote relationships and encourage people giving. So that's certainly something that we know how to do and shouldn't forget as a way to create seed capital.
And I think this idea of like Kiva, I love Kiva. Kiva was one of the first things that really turned me on to all this stuff, the micro lending stuff. I think as Episcopal Enterprises could create its own Kiva, and we should leverage our network of being Episcopalian, so we should network our relationships, and we should network our particularity. And so we can put it out there, we can have the Episcopal Enterprises Kiva, right? If you don't know what Kiva is, please go on the website and find out what it is. It's a micro-lending website where 100 investors through Kiva can pull their money together to help somebody open, a shoe repair shop, either out of this country or in this country or stuff like that, is to get something done, right? That people that need seed capital, and they get it paid back over time. And then you can reinvest that money in some other project. We should have that in the Episcopal Church.
Yes. Another shout out to Holy Currencies, Eric's book, which is where the term relational currency exchanges come from, and which is to underline the crucial asset we have in our relationships and in the opportunities to really expand on them. Okay, another barrier to social enterprise success, which I call the sneak challenge, and in some cases the biggest challenge, and that is a term we've already touched on, which is charity thing. What's listed on the slide are things why I have heard, and probably most of you have heard, said about how a not-for-profit organization should or should not organize itself. Now, when you look at this list in the context of what does it take to run a successful business, you will see that there is a major conflict. And the reality is, most of us grew up trained to think like this. There's been some work done in the last 5 or 10 years to break apart for example, the paradigm that if an organization has high overhead, they're bad and you shouldn't give money to them. There's been some chipping away at some of the elements of charity thing, but it is devious, it is covert, it is in all our communities, and it needs to be brought to the surface and dealt with, or it will probably ambush any social enterprise effort. No surprises, right?
People who want to work in the nonprofit world should not care about being paid well.
Right.
What's that say about our clergy compensation?
Right.
I mean, you substitute the word church for charity and nonprofit, and every
Sure.
clergy person here has heard this.
Right.
This is
100
a-
times, right? Yeah, that's right. I mean, we are a charity. So, and at the risk of over-making the point, this little chart is literally the result of a series of interviews I once did with a cohort of nonprofit organizations that I was working with, where they went and interviewed the staff within their organizations. And what you want to get about this chart is that on the far right side, everybody's like gung-ho about social enterprise in the abstract. But when asked if they'd be willing to actually talk about it or champion it to other people, the willingness to do so plummets. So this is a challenge that has to be managed if you're someone championing starting an earned income strategy. All right, and then what I consider the last challenge is a cluster of things which I put together under things which any startup business has to deal with. And the first is that most of us, most entrepreneurs, when they go to start a business, are doing it alongside of whatever else they're already doing. And while they may have a good idea, they may not know personally how to do it. Like they may not have the skills or the expertise necessary to go develop a housing project. The second is that too many times people get excited about an idea and become passionate about it and fail to make sure that there's actually people ready to use it, willing to buy it.
What's our next gathering about?
Yes, so that's why, and I consider that probably the most likely reason for failure, and therefore it's the topic for our next gathering in June. And so to just fill it all. So one way to think about, for one reason filling this sheet out is important is because we'll start here next time in helping people think about how to do market research. And you want to get when I say market research, I don't mean the kind that you pay lots of money to big marketing firms to do. I mean the kind of research that's walking around your neighborhood like Bishop Bruce does, and or figuring out other ways to really make sure that you hear from the people that you're thinking of serving with a product or service, to reality check it before you invest a lot of time and effort in it. So not doing a lot of market research, and then being undauntable, which is my umbrella for the importance of having at least a core of 3 to 5 people who have really committed to making this thing happen. So it's not on the edge of everybody's plate and ready to fall off the second there's something more urgent to do. And that's, again, definitely a danger when you're trying to start a social enterprise within a church or any not-for-profit organization. So those, as I said, those are the 3 big things I would identify, and I invite you now at your tables to map those things onto your own thinking about what your challenges will be, and see if you can come up with any others, or talk among yourselves about how you imagine addressing these areas of resistance and anything else that you see on your horizon. And I'm gonna give you just 5 or 10 minutes to do that, and then we'll wrap up.